Could the Miami Dolphins trade for Cincinnati Bengals linebacker Germaine Pratt? We'll talk about that and more on today's show because there's some rumors that Pratt could be on the move. Let's discuss. I am Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports, and we are discussing a Germaine Pratt trade because yesterday it was reported by Ian Rapoport and Tom Pelissero that he has requested a trade away from the Cincinnati Bengals. This is someone who has been a defensive captain and one of the leading tacklers in the entire National Football League, and with Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator in Cincinnati, being released or they mutually parted ways, however you want to use that term and language. He's now in Indianapolis, and Pratt is looking to be on the move, and I am very interested in a potential Pratt trade for Miami. We have talked at length about the needs on the defensive side of the football field for Miami. It starts in the safety room, then you look to the interior defensive line, but right up there with some of the other biggest needs is off-ball linebacker number 2. Jordyn Brooks is under contract next season, and he had a terrific first season for the Miami Dolphins under Anthony Weaver, but with David Long Jr. off of this roster now, Anthony Walker Jr. is a free agent, same thing with Tyrell Dodson. There needs to be someone next to Brooks in the middle of that defense, and they need to fill that spot. And adding Germaine Pratt to this defense could change the entire kind of outlook on this team. Pratt is someone who is always around the football, always making plays. He has a habit and a knack for forcing turnovers, which is something Miami really struggled with last season. I mean, Pelissero is making the note here. Pratt ranked 10th in the entire NFL in tackles this past year and was one of only 3 players with 140-plus tackles and 6 turnover plays. The other 2 players, Zaire Franklin and Zach Baun. Baun, also a free agent this offseason, was part of that Eagles defense that just won a Super Bowl. And you mentioned the turnover-worthy plays. Yeah, Pratt does that at an exceptionally high level. Over the last 4 seasons, in the NFL, he has had an interception, but 2 interceptions over the last 3 years, and he's forced 2 fumbles that have been recovered by his team, but he's forced more than that. Like this past season, he actually forced 5 fumbles. Only 2 of them were actually recovered. Pratt is someone who creates turnovers, and that is important for Miami, considering when you look at the defense last season, it ranked top 10, top half in the NFL in a lot of metrics. The only 2 things they didn't rank top half in: turnovers forced, they 27th in all football, and sack per game, 27th in football. So getting someone in Pratt who has a knack for forcing turnovers would really benefit this defense. And we're going to talk more about trading for Pratt here in just a second, but let me know your thoughts. Should the Dolphins trade for the Bengals linebacker? We're going to discuss contract, what it would cost, and more statistics on Pratt here in just a second. But let me know your initial thoughts. Type T for trade or type P for pass. I know a lot of people are going to be wondering about the financial aspect of it because Miami is so in a bad spot with their cap space. 3rd lowest cap space right now, in the negatives, $15 million. So they're going to make moves to get cap compliant, and Pratt would actually be one of a cheap acquired players for Miami. He has 1 year left on his deal, so he would want an extension, but you see that number on screen. He only has a base salary of $5.2 million in 2025. It's completely non-guaranteed, and there are no roster bonuses for Pratt, so if you acquired him via trade, you are getting one of the cheapest linebackers in all of football. But as I mentioned, if you do trade for him, it would probably be expected that you extend him, as he is only 28 years old and has some good seasons left in him. But if you just look at 2025, it would be an amazing addition for this Dolphins football team. It's perfect for Miami. The Dolphins need a lot of good players to join this roster on cheap contracts. And although it might not be as cheap as it is in 2025 for the future, because if you traded for him, you'd probably extend him, but to get him at $5 million, just a little bit more than that for this upcoming year, is terrific. We've talked about potentially bringing back Tyrell Dodson, and his projected contract could be $4.55 million over 2 seasons. Dodson isn't as good as Germaine Pratt. So to get Pratt for 1 year at $5 million, and if you extended him on a 3-year, $27 million contract, so $9 million per season, you now have him and Jordyn Brooks together for multiple seasons this year, next year. Pratt would be there after Jordyn Brooks' contract runs up. To me, it is a really good investment for Miami financially, but it also, because I don't think it would require that much of draft compensation to acquire Germaine Pratt. And coming up in just a second, we are going to look at what it would probably cost the Dolphins to trade with the Bengals to get the services of Germaine Pratt. But before we get into that, I got to show some major love to our sponsor on today's show. That is Mando, the best whole body deodorant company that makes sure I am smelling right on a consistent basis. And the Mando's whole body deodorant gives me confidence when I leave the house, and especially when I'm going on dates, because it is that time of year. Mando is safe to use anywhere on your body. It's created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. It's clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And I got a couple products in studio with me today. Like I mentioned, I'm always on the go, and I'm actually traveling this weekend to go visit a special someone. Well, yeah, you heard me. And I'm making sure I'm smelling right. Deodorant wipes, mini body wash. You know these will be packed away with me as I'm going on my trip. So join me, because we have a special offer for listeners. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you use code CHAT at shopmando.com. SHOPMANDO.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. That link in the description and comments of today's video. Make sure you get started with them. All right, let's get back to talking about Germaine Pratt, because I want to look at how he would fit and how he was graded out in 2024 in coverage and tackling, because that's something we talk about quite a bit here, because that's what lacked for the Dolphins linebackers outside of Jordyn Brooks. It was actually a little bit of a down season for Pratt in both of these categories. First, looking at coverage, I filtered out the stats to only show linebackers that stayed on the field consistently. So there's only 53 linebackers that qualified for snaps played in coverage, blah, blah, blah. He ranked top half in completion percentage allowed, which was very nice to see, but he didn't rank that highly in some other statistics. Yards allowed, touchdowns, relatively lower on this list, but you do see him top half in quarterback rating. And as I mentioned, he does have a knack for turning the ball over, man. He forced 2 interceptions, 3 PBUs. He gets his hands on the balls tipped up and forces a lot of incompletions, but also allows his teammates to come in on this batted ball drills and them come in to swoop in for interceptions. But I know a lot of people are going to be asking about the tackling numbers. These were a little less appealing, if you will. And that's what shocked me the most after looking into Pratt so much, because he is someone who does swarm around the football, makes a lot of tackles, makes a lot of plays, but he was not graded out highly in 2024. 51st linebacker out of 55 in a tackling grade. And you see the missed tackles. He really struggled in this department this past season, ranking 38th and 50th respectively. But you do see a couple other numbers. Stops and forced fumbles. You saw the forced fumbles earlier. That ranked 8th out of 55th qualified linebackers, but the stop number, it's a play grade for any player that ultimately produces a negative play for the opposing offense. Well, he forced 53 negative plays for opposing offenses last year, which ranks 7th in all of linebackers. So yeah, he struggled in terms of tackling at times and in coverage, but when you need him to make a play, he makes the play, which is why he would be so enticing for me to watch him be linebacker 2 next to Jordyn Brooks, who was a rock last year for Miami. We're going to finish out today's show in just a second, but make sure you are subscribed, because we have you covered every single day with videos, news, rumors, trade discussion. NFL draft and free agency is just around the corner. Make sure you join the channel as we're on the road to 68,000 subscribers. Join us today. All right, let's look at what Germaine Pratt would potentially cost in a trade. And talking with some other people here at Chat Sports, due to Pratt being 28, the off-ball linebacker role not being a position that is valued very highly in the league, and the fact that you're likely going to need to extend him if you make a trade for him, the compensation wouldn't be that bad. We're thinking late day 3, 7th-round pick. Maybe it ultimately gets risen up to a 6th-round pick if there is a lot of suitors and there's a market for Pratt in the trade rumor mill earlier this offseason. But the Dolphins have 3 7th-round picks, couple comps their own. If they could ship one of those out to acquire Pratt, that should be a no-brainer for me. And I talked about this on a video that will go out in a couple of days about blockbuster trade targets. And there's one, I'm not going to spoil it here, that I specifically mentioned is a buy low candidate. I am all for buying low on players when you can get them at a good value. And Pratt is a good value for the production he would bring as your LB2 next to Jordyn Brooks, but also the price of only paying him $5-6 million in 2025. It would be huge for Miami. And if you did acquire Pratt and paid him that much money for 2025, you could still bring Tyrell Dodson back. I know there's a lot of intrigue between both parties of a reunion for 2025 plus. When he split his time between the Dolphins and Seahawks in 2024, he combined for a lot of tackles, had 3 interceptions for the Miami Dolphins in the last 7 games of the season. I think Dodson's a solid guy. I wouldn't hate if he was linebacker 2 with Brooks this upcoming year, but you could also bring him back on a 2-year, $9 million deal, also take in Pratt for 2025, and have a linebacker trio of those 3. That's intriguing, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But let's go back to the trade idea for Germaine Pratt. Would you do this trade for the Bengals linebacker? He's also a good high-character guy. Like I mentioned, team captain in Cincinnati. I always like bringing in captains because the Dolphins just need more of those type of guys with how soft they are sometimes on the defensive side of the ball. Type A for accept or type D for decline. I would definitely type my A's. I'm definitely performing this trade for Pratt. And I mentioned the trio of Brooks, Dodson, and Pratt is a cheap linebacker room, and it's very improved. If you had those 3 on that projected Dodson contract, we know what Brooks and Pratt would be under contract for in 2025, you're only paying about $14-15 million to the linebacker room. And to have those 3 on that price point for 2025 would be an absolute steal, in my opinion, for the Dolphins. And you'd have a solidified group where if one got injured, you would not be panicking because you have that 3rd guy stepping up, but you can also rotate them in coverage situations, in run-stopping situations. To me, it provides you with a lot of versatility. It's something that I'm very much a fan of, and because it would be so cheap for 2025, I'm all in. Give me Germaine Pratt on that cheap contract. And if a trade ultimately does go down or anything else happens with the Miami Dolphins, we will have you covered. So hit that sub button and join us here at the channel because it's going to be a busy offseason going forward surrounding the Fins.